Good evening. What a powerful story we just heard. Every now and then you'll find a film critic who complains about the state of Hollywood by pointing out that there have been too many sequels or remakes of movies. For instance, there are over 25 James Bond movies. Both Star Trek and Friday the 13th have had 12 movies each. I can't imagine 12 movies for Friday the 13th. Star Trek, I can understand. Friday the 13th, I don't know. Including the Creed spin-offs, there have been 9 Rocky movies. Not counting the Avenger films, there have been 8 Spider-Man movies, and the king of them all, over 36 Godzilla movies. Godzilla rules. Ever since the first story was ever told, it seems human beings have wanted to know more. What happened next? Particularly if it's in a fascinating story. What happened next? I find myself feeling that way about this Sunday's gospel. Surely one of the most dramatic and moving episodes in all of the New Testament. And it makes me wonder, what happened to Lazarus after he was brought back from the dead? I always think of this, it must be hard to die, right? I would think. Lazarus has already gone through that. He's raised from the dead. Hey, you got to go through it again. How much longer did he live? What did people say to him, and what did he say to them? I mean, how do you explain this? Was he haunted by his memories of his former life? Did he remember what happened when he was dead? How did all of that change him personally? More importantly, what would any of us do if we are given a second chance at life? Well, there is no Lazarus Part 2. We really don't know what the sequel to the story is. His story stands by itself. But I think if you really want to know what happened next, the best answer is closer than we may think. Because in a sense, we can say, Lazarus is all of us. That, in fact, is the point of the Gospels we have been hearing the last 3 Sundays. 3 extraordinary events from the Gospel of John. 3 rather long readings. 3 people who had an encounter with Christ. 3 people whose lives were changed forever because of it. There was the skeptical and disbelieving woman at the well, who was so stunned at how Jesus knew her that she just had to go out and tell others about it. There was the blind beggar who gained more than just his sight. He came to see the truth of who Jesus really was. And there was Lazarus, literally the walking dead, restored to life because he answered the call of his friend Jesus. These people are more than figures on a page. They were flesh and blood, and they were very much like you and like me. I think we look deeper into this, we will recognize elements of truth to this, because in a sense we could say we are thirsting, just like the woman at the well, thirsting for truth and love. Jesus quenches that thirst. We are like the blind beggars because there are areas in our life that are blind. Christ gives us the light. And whether we realize it or not, we are like Lazarus. We are, in a sense, trapped in a tomb, hidden in the dark, wrapped up in our own brokenness at times and our own sinfulness. And we could be there forever. But in the midst of that, Jesus weeps. Jesus expresses his love. He weeps for us because he loves us. And to a certain extent, he has lost us because everything that we do against his wishes, everything that is not an expression of our baptism, anything that moves us away from the Lord, we get more and more lost. And he wants to bring us back like the Good Shepherd. And then unexpectedly, incredibly, wondrously, he calls out to us as he called out to Lazarus, Lazarus, come forth. Do we hear him? Lent is a time of prayer and penance, a time for sacrifice and a time for soul searching, a time for taking stock of who we are and what God expects of us. We began this prayerful season, in a sense, as the walking dead, marked with ashes, bearing a reminder of our fate, hearing words that told us to remember that we are dust, or to go and follow the gospel. And here we are, 5 weeks later, believe it or not, 5 weeks later, confronting again our destiny. But in the middle of all of that, Jesus calls out to us as he called out to Lazarus, "Come out." Now is the time for us to answer that call. Now is the time for us to leave behind the sin and the darkness that we deal with in our lives. Now is the time to leave the dwelling place of the dead. It is time to begin again, to get a second chance like Lazarus. It is a time to be reconciled with God. This Lent, at this church and in many churches in the diocese, we have made extraordinary efforts to let all the faithful in North Texas to be like Lazarus, to let everyone who hears the call of Christ to answer it, to stumble out of whatever tomb may be holding us and emerge again into the light, into a greater relationship with the Lord. Here at Good Shepherd, we do something very rare. We have confessions every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and by appointment anytime with any of the priests. So take this opportunity to make this Lent matter. Remember the woman at the well and the beggar who was blind. Both were transformed by one encounter with Christ. And remember especially Lazarus. Remember how Jesus wept for him. And remember how he then cried out, "Come out." He is weeping for all of us. He is calling to all of us. Follow the sound of his voice. It may seem like hope is lost at times, like nothing can ever change. It may even seem to some of us that we are as good as dead, but we aren't. We can begin life anew. All of us can start again, just like Lazarus. Hollywood knows that the great question that has compelled us since the beginning of time is, what happened next? This Lent, we have a chance to write our own answer, to create a sequel to our lives, the next chapter in our story. What